So as we prepare to reopen the church in the coming weeks, it's good to be reminded of what brought us to this point or through this point. We have yet to know of this great human tragedy of the coronavirus. And imagine that these things are happening in Jupiter and ask yourself the question, what is it that makes a daughter go grocery shopping for her elderly parents and then leave the bags outside their door after wiping them down thoroughly with Clorox bleach wipes? It's not fear. What is it that makes a grandfather drive for 12 hours without stopping to pick up his grandchildren so his children can work in their critical jobs and know that their offspring are safe and well? It's not money. What makes a neighbor sneak food to a house where she knows there are a number of undocumented workers who have the virus in their household and have no food? It's not politics. And what makes those undocumented workers, number one, stay home to keep the rest of society safe, and number two, suffer the risk of being infected themselves to care for their loved ones who have the virus? The answer to all four examples is love, only love. Love is what compels us to do what is right, and what is right is not always the simple response, but it is almost always the easy response, because the decision to do it is easy. And it's easy in your head because it's obviously the right thing to do. So love is easy. Jesus said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And Christians don't follow the commandments because we're afraid of hell or because of some reward in heaven necessarily. Disciples of Christ follow the commandments because we love God and we know God loves us. Jesus then summarized the 10 commandments down to 2. Love God and love your neighbor. We are used to the description of what love is as Christians from Corinthians chapter 13. We won't go through them, but you know what I'm talking about. Love is patient, love is kind, and so forth. Interestingly, though, Erich Fromm, a Jewish psychologist, wrote from his own perspective that love must have another number of things. Many of them were in common with Corinthians, but 2 stood out. So he said that love must have discipline, patience, humility, must be reasonable, and have faith and courage. And the 2 that stood out to me are that love must have discipline and it must have courage. The rest, a lot of commonality with the Corinthians. So to have discipline means doing something hard because it is the right thing to do or because it is good for you. We're usually not very disciplined because we tend to avoid the difficult. We prefer the easy way. We often do not do what is right because it involves sacrifice. But there can be no real love without some sacrifice. So love is hard. But I just said love is easy. So by way of explanation, Erich Fromm had a story. There is a traditional Hebrew story where Abraham was sitting outside his tent one evening when he saw a frail old man hobbling toward him. Being a good host, Abraham rushes out, greets him, invites him into his tent, and there he washed the old man's feet and gave him food and drink. He set it before him. That's the easy part. Then the old man immediately began eating without saying any prayer or blessing. So Abraham asked him, "Don't you worship God?" And the old guy replies, "I worship fire only and reverence no other God." When he heard this, Abraham became angry, grabs the old man by the shoulders, and throws him out into the cold night air. When the old man had gone away, God called to his friend Abraham and asked where the stranger was. Abraham said, I forced him out because he did not worship you. God answered, I have suffered him these 80 years, even though he dishonors me. Could you not endure him for one night? That's the hard part. You could not endure him for one night. Who is the old man in your life? The one that you have no patience for. The one, and not necessarily old, right? The one that you find it most difficult for you to love. I mean, in your household right now, with some discipline and a little patience, I think we could endure each other for at least a few more weeks until the strictest part of this quarantine is over. The truth is, though, that when I was reading this, it was not my family that I was thinking about as to who the old man is in my life. But first, love must have courage. So let's go there. Because we have to reach out to others with our love, just like God does for us. And when we reach out, we take risk. And unfortunately, we do not reach out very often because we're insecure or we're afraid of rejection. So it takes courage to love in addition to discipline. Now, with that in mind, I ask again, who are the people in your lives who come to mind when you hear the story about the old man and Abraham? And I think for many of us, this person is your former friend, the Democrat or Republican. Or he is the family member you cannot stand to be around because they are always so political. It could be someone here at church who you feel failed you somehow. Be honest with yourselves. If you refuse to talk to a person, any person, that you once cared about, then this gospel is telling you something. If God loves them, then you have to love them too, because God has endured them these many years. Why can't you love them for just 1 week? Love is hard. It requires discipline and courage. Unless you act with courage and are not afraid of rejection, unless you practice, unless you have discipline, it's easy to slip away from love and into what I've just named expediency. Expediency tells you that it is not a convenient time for love. Expediency tells you that this issue is too important for me not to stand up and fight. Expediency insists that your love is not universal or that your love must be paid for in full by the actions of others before you love them like God loves them. But the gospel says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And Jesus says the greatest commandments are to love God and your neighbor. So we exist to love. And when we love, we get to know Jesus better. Jesus did not qualify his sacrifice on the cross, and we cannot qualify our love. But our small sacrifices of love are rewarded, and not by earning our own salvation, but by getting to know Jesus better. That's what it means when it says, and whoever loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and reveal myself to him. So with that in mind, I have a request for you this week. Over the course of the next 7 days, tell at least one person that you love them when it is difficult for you to say the words. If it is someone that you're stuck with in your house right now, then today is a good day as any to start. If it is someone on Facebook, then a little "I love you" comment could go a long way toward healing their negativity, or what you perceive as their negativity, and healing your own negativity in the process. If you want to fix the world, love the world. If you want to fix a person, love that person. If you want to fix yourself, love yourself.